Week's going to be an interesting class, Matthew the 28th chapter, Matthew 28, talking about the Anastasia. Anastasia. What's Anastasia? The Russian word Anastasia comes right out of that because Russian comes right out of Greek. All right? Russian comes right out of Greek. Now, Jesus has been crucified. All right? They took him to the place called what? Golgotha. Golgotha. That's in Hebrew, all right? And in Greek, it's cranios. 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 What word do you think we get out in English out of that? Cranium. All right? In Latin, we get the word Calvaria. Calvaria. And that's where and the Latin Bible and the Catholic Church had so much power that we don't call it Mount Cranios. We call it Mount Calvary. All right? That comes from the Latin, not the Greek or not the Hebrew. It's Golgotha. How many of you knew that? That's where our word Calvary, at Calvary and all those songs, that is from the Latin, not from the Greek or not from the Hebrew, but from the Latin Vulgate, actually. All right? The Latin Vulgate. Matthew 28 chapter. He has, and by the way, this is another thing. A lot of the Catholic idea of the crucifixion rubbed off on Protestantism quite a little bit. It never did rub off on Baptists too much, but it did. And they have Jesus crucified on Friday, and of course he is in the grave Friday evening, Saturday, and then Sunday morning, Sunday a.m. he's raised up. Now, is that 3 days and 3 nights in the grave? What was the sign of Jonah? What was the sign of Jonah? All right, Jesus said, I won't give you any sign except the sign of Jonah, which is the Son of Man will be in the heart of the earth or in the earth for 3 days and nights. Now, is there 3 days and nights from here? And a lot of people say it's a figure of speech. I'm a literalist. When it comes to the Bible, I'm a literalist. I think it literally says what it says. Okay? Now, there are many weeks. Now, Brother Roger, you have studied Judaism a little bit, haven't you? Can Jews have 2 Sabbaths in a week?
Yes.
Absolutely. And this is 1 week where there were 2 Sabbaths. 2 Sabbaths. Okay? The first Sabbath was going to come on Wednesday evening. All right? Well, Jesus was on trial all Tuesday night. Okay? All Tuesday night, and they brought him before Pilate, and then he was crucified. He was put on the cross at 9 o'clock on Wednesday, 9 a.m. All right? Wednesday night at 6, the Sabbath begins when? When?
Sundown on Sunday.
At sundown, which is basically 6 o'clock. Okay? On the clock. Now, many people say Saturday is the Sabbath. Saturday is not the Sabbath, so to speak. When does the Sabbath begin?
Friday night.
Friday night at 6 p.m. is when the Sabbath begins. When is it over? Saturday at 6 p.m. All right? That's when it is. That's how many of you knew that? Well, I know Brother Roger did. Anybody else know that? All right. The Sabbath is Friday at 6 till Saturday at 6. That's the Sabbath. Okay? Now, there are different little groups of people, the Seventh-day Adventurists. You know who they are? I always call them the Seventh-day Adventurists. That's an adventure. All right? It sure isn't anything close to the truth. That's all I can say. That's modern Judaism. Anyway, and they didn't work in the Bible. Paul thrashed them real good there. I don't know what they're going to do with the book of Ephesians and Galatians and Colossians and things. Maybe they just kick them out of their Bible or whatever. But anyway, the Seventh-day Adventists, just recently, they began to worship Friday evening till Saturday afternoon. It used to be on Saturday. Okay, but now they realize. One group of these sacred name people, you got the Sacred Name Bible. Brother Bill has one of them. Some of you got Sacred Name Bible. How many of you got one of them? Few of the class. Anyway, the whole deal is that they Their Sabbath is the Sabbath that's in Jerusalem, because that's the only Sabbath. So whether they're in Africa, whether they're in America or South America or wherever it is, they observe the Sabbath that is in Jerusalem at 6 p.m. Friday evening till 6 p.m. Saturday. That's their Sabbath, whatever time it is, wherever they are. That's what you call straining out the gnat and swallowing the camel. Besides that, we shouldn't observe the Sabbath as the Sabbath. If you do, it's blasphemy. Simple as that. Because our Sabbath is who? Jesus. Jesus is our Sabbath. Okay? So now, Jesus was buried. He had to bury him and get him in the ground before, what time did they take him off the cross? He was dead on the cross at 3 o'clock, wasn't he? All right? They took him off the cross and they had to bury him real fast. Because here's the Sabbath. This is a high Sabbath too. Right here, there's the Sabbath here at 6 p.m. So they have to get him in the ground before 6 p.m. And these Jews are real stricklers when it comes to the Sabbath. Okay? So they get him in the ground. By 6 p.m. the next day now, he's hurriedly buried. Jesus had 2 burials. Many Bible scholars believe what I'm telling you today. Now you go all the way back to Bullinger and you go back in the 1800s and you'll see Baptists writing about this all through time. This isn't something that just jumped up, but Martin Luther, and of course, where did Luther come from? Catholic Church. Where did John Calvin come from? Catholic Church. They were both Catholic priests, okay? So they come out with a Catholic idea of this, all right? And many preachers follow this Friday crucifixion thing, but I don't buy it, okay? Because I'm a literalist. Anyway, by 6 p.m., that Sabbath was over. So in the morning, even they could have done some extra burial right here. We find out that they put a lot of more linen on him. They put a lot more spices on him later on and did a complete burial and put him in. And that's when the tomb was finally sealed. All right? It was on Friday. This is when the tomb was finally sealed. Now, from Friday on the Sabbath is 6 p.m. when that Sabbath begins. And, of course, it's over on Saturday afternoon. So he's in the ground now. 3 days and 3 nights, literally. Okay? Now, let's go over here. Now, late on the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week. All right? As it began to dawn toward the first day of the week. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary. Now, there's a lot of different discrepancies who this other Mary is. All right? This may have been Mary, Martha, and Lazarus' Mary. Okay? Because we know that she believed Jesus. She was the only one that really understood his death and burial, didn't it? All right? Well, Mary Magdalene did, and maybe this Mary. Because Mary Magdalene was the other Mary that anointed his feet, wasn't she? All right? 2 Marys anointed Jesus' feet. For the burial, or in his head, that is, and his feet. They washed his feet and anointed his head. And the other Mary came to look at the grave. And behold, a severe earthquake had occurred, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and rolled away the stone and sat upon it. Now, this is an angel. All right? Now, what angels look like? What do angels look like? What? They look like men. Every angel that you see in the Bible looks like a man. Okay? All of them look like a man. Now, over here, on the Ark of the Covenant, these are not angels, basically. Technically, they're not angels. What are they? Cherubims, which is an order of angels, and they have wings. But these other angels, the regular angels, evidently don't have wings, or else they're hidden really well because you don't see them. You never talk about the guys having wings. They're mistaken for people so many times. Remember when the angels went into Sodom and Gomorrah? And they mistook them for men, and so these reprobate homosexual queers, or whatever you want to call them. Okay, that's what they are, you know. They wanted to have sex with them. That was it. And, of course, they blasted them. They blinded them. Okay? And they thought they were men. Behold, this severe earthquake had occurred, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled away the stone and sat upon it. And his appearance was like lightning. Now, I don't have the exact figures for this, but I know this. I have them written down someplace. Did you know that lightning has more heat and energy in it than the surface of the sun? Yeah, it does. Lightning is one of the most powerful forces of anything. Light. What?
I'd like to know who checked that
Well, they checked. That's a scientific thing. Okay. Lightning. In America, you know, I've said this in a few of the classes. Okay. Scientists, Marilyn, scientists. Lightning is very powerful. Now, at one time in America, from one end of this country to the other, all the way up into Canada and Alaska, all the way down into Mexico, the American Indians, they say that the American continent had more population. This is the most populous area in the world, even before Christ. That there was about 150 million people here, and that they had completely manicured the ecology of the whole place. They had burned the plains. They had burned the plains. Indians carried flints with them, would start fires, and they'd burn off all the underbrush. They burned it all the way from the east to the west coast. It was that way, and all the way up into Canada. They had burned it all over the place, and there was no underbrush at all. No underbrush. And they had created the Great Plains. How many of you ever been in Texas? Anybody been in Texas? What takes over Texas if you don't do something with it? Mesquite. The Indians had burned all the mesquite brush off, and for miles and hundreds of miles in places there was nothing but savannas of great plains and grasslands. And every year they'd set that on fire so new grass would come up and it'd kill all the fleas and ticks and all that kind of stuff, and they could completely control the environment. They had driven the buffalo. The buffalo basically were in the Great Plains area. They were in Kansas, they were in Texas and Oklahoma and to there. But the Indians burned all the way back. There was no heavy forested land in Illinois and Wisconsin, and all the way back to New York they had burned all the underbrush out. And they had buffalo grazing all the way back there. That was their portable food stuff. That was their animal husbandry. Okay? For many years, even the Smithsonian Institute suppressed what I'm telling you today. After 1491, when Columbus came here, the most things that spread the disease, the Indians were not conquered by guns. They were conquered by disease. Malaria, smallpox, and all the diseases of Europe, the plagues. That's what was brought in. And the most efficient way it was spread was through pigs. Pizarro down in South America had 2,000 pigs that went with his armies, like dogs all around him. 2,000 pigs, that's portable food stuff. When Hernando de Soto met a Mumlai family in 1539 and 40, he had pigs all over. The Chickasaws back there had great plantations and farms. All of a sudden, a few years after that, over 50% of them were dead from disease. All the way back. When the first white man landed on the East Coast, they had great populous cities all the way up and down through there. And they said that the forests were not forests, they were like parks. There was great grass underneath it, and the trees were far apart. There were pecan groves, there were peach groves and plum groves and things all over. It was the most beautiful agriculture area. 2/3 of America was under agriculture. By 1800, and when Columbus landed, there were 60 million buffalo on the plains. By 1800, there was 100 million buffalo, because so many Indians had died they couldn't eat them all. The populations came up. Now, I said all this about to get back to lightning. Now today, and I've been saying this for 40, 50 years, if the white man had just start burning the ground off again and burning the forest and all the undergrowth, they wouldn't have these big forest fires like they do right now that tear up everything. Only thing that starts the forest fire now is lightning, most of the time. And it burns up whole areas. Indians had a pretty good idea way back then when they talked about burning off the vermin and creating grasslands. They worked with the environment. It said they were the greatest environmentalists of all time, but they had their thumb on the scale. They were manicuring the environment. Lightning. Lightning is powerful. Well, his appearance was like lightning, and his garment was white as snow. I want to show those set of films on, and it may be while I'm laid up here, maybe we'll show those Left Behind films. Okay? When the rapture came in the Left Behind films, this is one thing that struck me because I've seen this in the Bible. When you get raptured, when you're raptured, what happened to Elijah's clothes when he got raptured? Where did his clothes go? They were left behind. Who took his mantle? Elisha. He left his clothes behind. Adam and Eve were not naked in the garden. Not really. They didn't have any clothes on, but they weren't naked. They were clothed with the glory of God. You know something? We may be running around naked for all eternity. You know that? But we're going to be clothed with the glory of God. Not with clothes. Not with J.C. Penney. But with the glory of God. And I think that that's what this angel's got. I think he's clothed with the glory of God. And and in those pictures, those Left Behind pictures, you see all their clothes laying there. Just left behind. But you know what? That's basically what the Bible teaches. All these graves are going to open up. The clothes that they stuck on them is going to be left behind, and they're going to be clothes of glory. Naked but not naked. What do you think about that? Naked but not naked. His appearance was like lightning, and his garments was white as snow. Glory! That's what his garments were, glory. Glory emanating from the Lord. Verse number 4. And the guards shook for fear and became like dead men. Who are these guards? These are not the Roman guards. Now get that out of your head. I don't care what Cecil B. DeMille says or any of them other guys. These aren't Roman guards. Who are these dudes? These are temple guards. These are Herod's guards. There's his bodyguards and the guards in the temple area. Okay, these aren't. What did Pontius Pilate tell the high priest when they asked for one of his guards? Jump in the creek, fellas. You just go make it as safe as you can do it. Take your high priest ring, signet ring, and put some clay around the outside of that thing and just put his little insignia and see how fast you can do it. He said, you couldn't whip us. And the guards shook for fear and became like dead men. They fainted. That's what they did. They fainted. When you faint, what happens? You look like you're dead. A long time ago. Now, Graham's told me this, Doris. Doris is my cousin right there. Our great-great-grandfather was Sam Paul. And he was a marshal. And they said he was a good-looking man. He was real dark complected with this jet black hair. And those, like your daddy had them, those steel gray eyes. Bob, your dad, was dark complected, very dark. But he had steel gray eyes. And Sam Paul would stand up there, and they said he could stand like a statue. And this isn't in any book. This is from Graham's, okay? The only place it's written is where I've written it down, because I'm the only one that knew this. Anyway, she said she watched her daddy out at these 4th of July get-togethers and everything in Paul's Valley, and she said he'd stand there, and she said he'd stand there just like this, or with his arms crossed. Just like this. And he said, wouldn't move a muscle, you couldn't see him breathe. Didn't blink an eye. He'd stand there, and the girls would come by, and they thought he was really handsome. And they'd look at him anyway. But they couldn't figure out whether he was a statue or a real person. They said, boy, this is like the Wax Museum. Is this guy really for real? Is he really alive? Anyway, this one real cute girl, Graham said that she kept going by and looking at her dad. And she kept going by and looking at him. She got up real close, and she'd go around, and she'd put her hand in front of his face and everything. He didn't look, didn't do nothing. He just didn't move a muscle. He hadn't gotten any mercury, I can guarantee you that much. No arsenic. Anyway, he stood there, and finally she reached out and poked him like that, and he said, "Boo!" And she screamed and fainted and fell like dead. And they had to revive her and haul her off. Well, they were like dead men. They had fainted. And the angel answered and said to the woman, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you're looking for Jesus who has been crucified." Jesus. What does Jesus mean? What's Jesus mean? It's Yahshua, is what really it should be. But what does it mean? Huh? Jehovah saves. Jehovah saves. He is not here, for he is risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he was lying. Now the angel said, "Now come and see where he was. You put him in here now. You're the one that gave him that extra burial. He was buried twice. He was hurriedly buried in the grave. They went back and they did a royal burial for him. That's what they did. They really put a lot of spices on him. What they in Egypt, in Hebrew, when it says he was mummified, he was spiced. That's what it says. Literally in Hebrew it says he was spiced. He was not mummified, but he was spiced. Spiced up real good. How many of you ever tasted Maryland's spiced peaches, her pickled peaches? No, nobody. Somebody. Anybody here? Nobody? Anyway, she's got these spiced peaches. They're really spicy. They spiced up the dead bodies. You know, what they tried to do was cure them. Make jerky out of them, basically. You know, and spice them up. Jerky, what do you do with jerky? You spice it up. You take meat, you slice it out real thin, and you pour pepper and salt on it. And that preserves it. You know, that's what they were doing with bodies. They figured that if they put something smelled real good, that the body wouldn't quite stink so bad. So it was spiced up. Okay? Now they did, yes. Yes.
Why do you think that the women didn't faint, but the guards stayed in? And the guards were like special forces.
The women were believers. That makes a whole lot of difference. I was on the radio talking on the ham radio all over the world last night, and the guy asked me. He said, "What about the rapture? Why do you think the dead are raised before the living?" And I said, "I think it." He said, "I've been thinking about that for a long time." I said, "Why do you think the dead are raised before the living?" And I said, "Well, one of my teachers told me a long time ago, so that the living will see the glory of the resurrection. About the time they get up, they come out of the ground and they get up about eye level, just a little above eye level, then they're gone. I think it is for this living to see the glory of the resurrection. And then they're gone. And they leave their clothes behind. Zip. And they're carried off, clothed in glory. Okay? Look where he is lying. Verse number 7. And go quickly and tell his disciples that he has risen from the dead. From the necros. You know, out in every cemetery is a necropolis. A necropolis. A necropolis. A city of the dead. Necros, that's what it is from Greek. And polis, a city of the dead, every one. Sometimes when I do a funeral, I'll go out there and I said, "This is a necropolis, but one of these days there's going to be a whole lot of people come out of these grounds. They're not going to be there anymore. They're going to be gone. The graves are going to break open." He said he's risen from the dead ones. And behold, he is going before you into Galilee. What does Galilee mean? Circle. You take the teacher home with you. And there you will see him. Behold, I have told you. Verse number 8. And they departed quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy, and ran to the mathetes, ran to the disciples. What are these? What does that word mathetes mean? Habitual learners. Habitual learners. Go tell the disciples. This is a church, people. These disciples were the church. The church was already in existence here. What does the word church, ecclesia, mean? It comes from ek and kalio. Ek and kalio. All right? One's called out. One's called out. That's what it means. Where did he call them out? Where did he begin to call his church out? at Galilee. He went by there and said, come. Did the church have baptism before the day of Pentecost? Did the church ever baptize anybody before the day of Pentecost? Yeah. Did the church have the Lord's Supper before the day of Pentecost? All right. Did the church ever have a business meeting before the day of Pentecost? Did the church have a treasurer before the day of Pentecost? All right, that ought to answer that. Okay. Let's think about that for a little while. Report to the disciples which were the church, and behold, Jesus met them and greeted them. He walked right to the wall, didn't he? Remember that? They were disbelieving and everything else, and he walked through the wall. He didn't have to open the door. Why did he walk through the wall? How much of you is solid matter? Huh? I weigh about 169 pounds now. I used to weigh 220, 240 with 6'2". Look at what a shrunk up prune I am today. Think they have embalmed me already. If you took that 168 pounds and put it down to solid matter, it wouldn't be hardly a fly speck like that. 300 or 400 pounds would be like that. What's the rest of it? It's space. Every one of you are miniature universes spinning around with protons and neutrons and all of that. You are moving energy. The chairs that you sit on are really not solid, but they take form and look like form, and you can push on them. You can sit on them. See there? You sit on it, it's going to hold you up, but actually it's moving. And there's more space in it than there is pure solid matter. How many of you ever had a fireplace or burned wood? How much of wood is space? A lot of it. When you burn a great big log, what does it turn into? A few little ash. And then you compress that ash down into solid matter, and you'll find out the biggest part of that is what? Air. Well, when all of our spaces line up with the spaces in that wall, you can walk right through it when you're perfectly in union and in harmony with the universe. One of these days, you'll be able to walk through walls. Just like that. Just like that. What is one of the most densest forms of matter that exists on the earth today? What will protect you from radiation more than anything else? What? Well, there's something even more dense than lead. Gold. Gold. All right. Lead and gold. All right. What's that city going to be paved with? Gold. All right. Think about that for a while. Gold reflects too, doesn't it? Gold reflects. Let's go on a little further. Then Jesus said to them, do not be afraid. Go and take the word to my brethren. Leave for Galilee. Oh, let's go back up a little bit. I jumped down too far. And they departed quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy, and ran to report to the disciples. And behold, Jesus met them and greeted them. And they came up and took hold of his feet and worshipped him. They kept on holding on to him. We know that Mary did this, don't we? Mary wouldn't turn loose of him. And he said, quit holding me. Quit holding on to me. I have things to do. I've got some things to do. And they worshipped him. Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God and him only. Were they worshiping God? Absolutely. This is the Lord thy God. Jesus is the Lord. When the devil was tempting Jesus, you remember some of the things that Jesus said to the old devil when he answered him? He said, I'll give you all of these kingdoms out there. And by the way, the kingdoms were Satan's. They still are. You know who's running this world? It's not the Lord today. It's this world's on a long leash. All right? The old devil's got it. But one of these days, the Lord's going to take it back. Right there. He's going to take it back. He's going to tie up the devil, isn't he? chain him up where he belongs. Boy, I'll be glad of that. Well, they took a hold of his feet and they worshiped him. The old devil, when he showed all these kingdoms to the Lord, he says, if you'll just bow down and worship me, I'll give you all these kingdoms. And what did Jesus tell him? Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God and him only. He said, you worship me. I don't worship you. You worship me. At one time, Lucifer did worship Jehovah, the man that he was tempting right there. He did worship him. And he couldn't be tricked. And he did it for you and he did it for me. Then Jesus said to them, do not be afraid. Go. Take word to the brethren and leave for Galilee, and there you shall see me. Now while they were on their way, behold, some of the guard came into the city and reported to the chief priests all that had happened. Now this is the Jewish guard, again, the Jewish soldiers, the Jewish guard. They went into the city, and they told the chief priests, this is the arche-heres, the chief priest, the big shots. These were ones on the Sanhedrin. This was that crooked Sanhedrin that we talked about last week. That remember when I read you Pilate's letter? And he said they broke all of their own laws. And they told all of them what had happened. And when they had assembled with the who? The rest of the Sanhedrin, the elders now, and counseled together, they Sanhedrin together. That's what we're talking about, the Sanhedrin. By the way, who invented the Sanhedrin court? Who was the first one to suggest it? A long time ago now. Huh? Who was it? Moses' father-in-law. Moses' father-in-law. He said, you get 70 men. All right. Get 70 men. This is the beginning of the Sanhedrin. And they were assembled as a Sanhedrin with the elders, and they counseled together, and they gave a large sum of money to the soldiers. Twice they've got blood money. The other blood money, remember last week, they took Judas Iscariot, man from Carioth. He went into the Holy of Holies and threw that money into the Holy of Holies, which was basically a death penalty when he did that, but he didn't care because he went out and hung himself anyway. Now they go and they give a large sum of money to the soldiers to lie. Wonderful characters in it. It reminds me of 1415 Truxton Avenue down here. The county supervisors. And he said, you are to say, his disciples came by night and stole him away while we were asleep. Now, if they were Roman soldiers and they were asleep, what would have happened to them? They'd been dead people. A Roman soldier, you went to sleep on your shift, you were dead. You better cut your own throat. Because you were going to die. They might even crucify him. And 13 it says, and said, you are to say, his disciples came by night and stole him away while he was asleep, and if this should come to the governor's ears, we will win him over and keep you out of trouble. He wouldn't have kept, I'm going to tell you something, if these were Roman soldiers, they couldn't have been kept out of trouble. No way. Verse number 15, and they took the money and did as they had been instructed. What happened? What was Manlius? Remember Manlius there, the Roman soldier, the centurion there at the cross? What did he say? Surely this was the Son of God. Many of the Roman soldiers believed there at the cross of Calvary. They had some Roman converts there. By the way, what is the Romans today? Who are they? Who are the Romans today? Huh? Who are the Romans today? Who are the people of Rome today? Italiano. The Italians. These were the Italians. Okay. And this story was widely spread among the Jews even to this day. All right? That was the day when this was written. Okay, not today, but the day it was written. They're still telling that story in some of the writings. You ask a Jew, all the Jewish writings that talk about Jesus, of course, they just spit when they talk his name. You know, I mean, they can't stand him. But they'll say, well, his disciples, his disciples stole his body. He never was resurrected. Verse number 16 now. But the 11 disciples, who are these disciples now? 11 disciples. It's talking about 11 disciples. Who are these 11 disciples? These aren't the regular church members. Huh? Who are these? These are the apostles. Okay, apostles. Apo and stello. That's a very important word. We get our word apostle right out of the Greek. Okay? That means to be sent out with great authority and power. What was the first gift placed in the church? Apostles. Where did that take? What period of time did that take? Was it before or after Pentecost? Before. Okay. The first gift placed in the church was apostles. All right? And he ordained 12 of them, didn't he? And one of them was what? A devil. That just shows us today that in churches there are devils today. Jesus had one, we got him too. Okay? No, we're not any better off than he was. Every now and then we have problems with devils in churches. All right? And the 11 disciples, the 11 apostles proceeded to Galilee. The 12th one was laying dead. Okay? To the mountain which Jesus had designated. And when they saw him, they worshipped him. But some were doubtful. Now, who was the doubtful one? Thomas. His name was also called Didymus, which means what? Thomas's other name was called Didymus, which means what? Twin. Thomas had a twin. He was one of a twin. He was a twin. Thomas, called Didymus. All right? Thomas doubted. And when Jesus appeared to him, he said, I won't believe it. I will not believe that he is resurrected till what? Who can tell you? Who can tell me that? Brother Montana, do you remember what he said?
The scars in his hands.
He said, until I see the scars in his hands, basically it was there, and in his feet, and I thrust my hand in his side where by the way, the Jewish tell us that they went to the temple area and they found a sword that Goliath's sword, the one that David cut Goliath's head off with, and they wanted to stab Jesus with that sword because they thought that sword had great power in it. Because David, the mighty man of God, had used it. And so some authorities say that was a sword that they stabbed Jesus in the side with, the one that cut Goliath's head off. They stabbed. He said, unless I thrust my hand in his side. And what did Jesus say to him? Come here, Thomas. Put your finger through the nail scars in my hands and in my feet, and thrust your hand in my side. And what did Thomas say? My Jehovah, my Elohim, my Lord, my God. My Jehovah, my Elohim, my Adonai ha'Adonim. All right? And they worshipped him. Verse number 18. This is very, very important. This does away with all false religions. Anything that started this side of Galilee is a false religion. Did you know that? All right. We're going to find that out right here. And Jesus came up and spoke to them, saying, all authority, exousia. That's that word, exousia. Exousia. That's quite a word. All exousia. Exousia means liberty. It means power. It means a commission. A commission. Like a general. Like a major. Some great commission. It means real powerful authority. Powerful authority. One of my favorite teachers was Darius Sherwood Madden. He was a major, sergeant major in World War II, and he was at Anzio Beach. Anzio Beach. He was all over Europe and Africa, out there running around, chasing around, fighting Germans during that time. And I told you the story. If you're going to go to the website, by the way, there's 3,393 sermons on the websites now. Randall, Saturday night, Friday night, he put up 1,004 sermons. 1,004 sermons he put up. Man, there's hundreds more going up. There's a lot of them out there. Anyway, on there, you look up Anzio Beach, and you can hear Brother Madden tell in his own words what happened at Anzio Beach. He was down there in the ditch with Moxie Gumbo, one of his men that had covered his back all through the war. Moxie Gumbo was a vicious man, a killer. He was a bootlegger out of Virginia. And he'd killed a lot of men in his life, and he loved killing soldiers. He'd wound them and cripple them and shoot their hands and shoot them in the feet and just laugh as they would, their companion was kind of struggling. One time one was crawling up, one German says, comrade, help me. Old Moxie Gumbo took the 45 out and shot him in the head. Like that. The war was just about over. Moxie Gumbo went crazy. They were in Anzio Beach, held down. They were starving to death. Brother Madden had made a pot of coffee, and he said, Moxie Gumbo, you want to drink it or wear it? Turned around to him, and he came out with a bayonet, and he ducked and stuck that bayonet in the side of that box in that ditch. He pulled out his 45 and blew his brains out. He had authority to do that. He said, I had to kill that man. He said it had taken 30 or 40 men to hold him down. We'd have lost a whole bunch of men over one man. I had to dispatch him. Exousia is authority, great authority, powerful authority. How much authority did the disciples, the apostles, when he sent them out with great authority on the limited commission? The church even had a limited commission before Pentecost, by the way. They had power over devils, didn't they? All of it. They had power over all, exousia, over all of it. Okay? All power, all authority. I have been commissioned by the whole Godhead, and I'm going to give it to you, has been given to me upon earth and in heaven and upon earth. I want you to, now it says, go ye therefore, that's not what it says in Greek. What does it say in Greek? Anybody know? What's it say in Greek? After you've been scattered. After you have been scattered. That's what it says. After you have been scattered. Because they are going to be persecuted and they are going to be scattered. Okay? King James said, go ye therefore, so everybody else followed suit because they didn't want to change the rigmarole. Okay? It doesn't say that, though. It says, after you've been scattered. What is the commission? What is the authority? What is the command? What's the imperative? Make habitual learners. That's what we're doing this morning. We're making habitual learners. We're making disciples, matetes. Make disciples of all nations, dipping them. It didn't say nipto them. It didn't say rontizo them. It said dip them. All right? Dip them, baptizo them. Where's my other? There it is. These glasses really messed me up. I'm just going to write over this with black. Baptizo. That our word immersion comes out of mergio, Latin. All right? And then we have rontizo with a rough breather over it, which means to sprinkle. All right? And then we have the word nipto, which means to pour. All right? I didn't say go pour on people. A little water. It didn't say sprinkle a little water on somebody. What does baptism represent? Huh? The death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. You die. When I baptize somebody, they die to their old world and old life and their old first birth, and they're raised anew to newness of life. All right? Baptism is a type of a burial. Now, when you go out and you bury somebody, you don't just sprinkle a little water, a little dirt on top of them. You dig a hole and you bury them. All right. Baptizing them. After you've made disciples out of them, then you baptize them in the name of, in aston onoma. It means in the name of, and that word name is singular. There aren't three gods. There's only one God. We have a triune God. We know Him as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, but the only God you're ever going to see is who? Jesus. That's it. That's it. He is the full embodiment of the Godhead. You are three, but how many of you are there? You're made in God's image, aren't you? You are body, you are spirit, and you are soul. That's three, representing the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Okay? The Father is what? Like the soul. The Holy Spirit, like the Spirit. And Jesus, our body, is like Jesus. Physical. Okay? In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. All right? Make disciples. Baptize them. He's talking to his church. And then verse number 30. Verse number 30. Teaching them. Indoctrinating them. It's didaskalo. Teaching. Teaching them to guard with their lives. That's what the word means. To guard with their lives. Guard with their lives all that I have commanded you. And lo, pay attention. I am with you every day, even to the end of the age. Now, Joseph Smith stuck his head up in the early 1800s. And he said that God was dissatisfied with all churches, that there was none of them that he liked, that they were an abomination, and that he was going to start a new one. That's what they call the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now, I don't believe Joseph Smith at all, because I believe Jesus. Because he said, I'll be with you until the end of the age. 1800 was not the end of the age. John and Charles Wesley. John and Charles Wesley came over to America to start evangelistic things, to start their method of teaching. That's why they call them Methodists. They came out of the Church of England, and they came over here, and they started their missionary tours, and they went back to England and happened to attend a Baptist church and got saved after they'd come over here already. They heard the preaching of the gospel, they got saved. When people get to reading the Bible and everything, I don't care if they're missionaries. There's a lot of missionaries going to the mission field and got to read the Bible and got saved on the way to the mission field. That happened many times. Judson, all these, you hear about all these people in history. I taught that in church history, different ones. Well, John and Charles Wesley didn't need to be commissioned. The Church of England didn't need to be commissioned. Martin Luther and John Calvin didn't need to start another Protestant religion. The truth was already there. They had fought it. John Calvin debated against Baptists and had them murdered. Luther killed so many Baptists. It's unbelievable how many he killed. The John Calvin's descendants and the Luthers both have apologized to the Baptists for killing so many of them, and the intolerance that they had toward them. Herbert Armstrong said that the gospel hadn't been preached for 1,800 years when he started preaching. I don't believe that man. The Lord said, I'll be with you always until the end of the age, that he's going to have a church here. When I deal with a Mormon, they come to me with their little Doctrines and Covenants and Pearl of Great Price and the Book of Mormon, and they say, yeah, we have another gospel. I said, I don't believe it. I believe Jesus. He said his church wouldn't cease to be. And it's you're by the way, you're sitting in one of those churches today. That's where you are, right here. You're here, and we've come together to worship God and to study His Word. We're going to go to Mark. The next week we're going to go to Mark, and if you have a little chart here, these 4 flags. This is the tabernacle there, and there were 4 flags around. We just studied Matthew, which is the lion. All right, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Jesus was the King of Israel. All right. Next week we're going to start studying Mark. And what is Mark? On the opposite end, what is that? Huh? No, that's it's an ox or a calf. Mark looks at Jesus as the burden, the servant of God. Animals. The reason a cow or an ox is called a beast of burden, a large beast of burden that can pull a plow, because they have been beasts of burden all the way through man ever since the garden. Okay? All right, we're going to go then. And all of these 4 flags on here represent the 4 Gospels. And there were 4 images in the book of Revelation of the 4 beasts. And there were 4 images in the book of Daniel, weren't they, in Ezekiel? It's all talking about the 4 Gospels. There were 4 flags over the 4 different directions. All right. Well, Brother David, are you going to come up here? Thank you for your attention. I hope you learned something from the Word of God, and I hope you apply it to your lives. Go out and do something eternal. I'll be here at 4:30 in the afternoon to teach the book of Genesis, Lord willing, and allow me to. All right.
Okay, on our prayer list today, Anna would like prayer for her families and also her health. And then the Howard family would like prayers for their family.